بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا ومولانا أبي القاسم محمد
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد
وعلى آل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين الذين أذهب الله عنهم رجسه وطهرهم تطهيرا.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
قال الله الحكيم في كتابه الكريم: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. وسبحان الذي بيده ملكوت كل شيء وإليه ترجعون. صدق الله العلي العظيم.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
A series of discussion have come to an end tonight. Tomorrow is the day of Ashhura. Tonight is a blessed night. One of the 5 major nights of the year. The night of Ashhura is nothing less than Laylatul Qadr. It is taqdeer which is written by your tears. Sayyid al-Shuhada is Qatilul Abarah. Tears that flow for the sake of Sayyid al-Shuhada are such that they raise the maqam of an individual on these last nights. Ma'rifah which is gained, according to riwayat, is gained because of these tears. Thank Allah that you have the ability to cry. Not everyone is given this tawfiq. Not everybody is given this tawfiq. You know, they say that there's some people who come to the majlis. When they come to the majlis, Imam Hussein has picked them to come. In the way that Allah is Rahman, Allah is also Rahim. Rahmani of Allah is for all of creation. Hussein's invitation is an open invitation. You'll see many people coming, open invitation. Come and join the caravan of Hussein. But in the way that Allah is Rahim, in this way Insani Kamil is Rahim. Imam Hussein is Rahim. So therefore, when certain people come into his majlis, he puts their hand over their head. Lutf of the Imam is on their head. That means that wherever they go, Hussein is taking care of them. Whether they're at home or outside, they've got nothing to worry about, because they've given their entire hope to that Hussein. And that Hussein, according to our ulama, says that when there's some people who come to the majlis, not everybody, inshallah one day everyone, but there's certain people, special lutf of the Imam is on them, because Zahra's dua is with them. They are those people who come to the majlis and they sit down, and they're waiting for the dhakir, or the alim, or the khatib to say Hussein. The minute they say Hussein, you've seen them in your majlis. What happens is tears begin to come into their eyes, and tears begin to flow. In the way the 6th Imam alayhi salam says, that when you cry for my Jad Hussein, cry like a mother cries over her dead son. For that to happen, one has to have this attachment to Sayyid al-Shuhada. Has to have this attachment. And you know what? Many a times the tears that flow are tawfiq. You don't know where they came from. You don't know why they came from. You did a good action maybe. You helped somebody. You guided someone. And then all of a sudden you come to this majlis. You know when you come here, it's a matter of respect for you. Why is it respect for you? Because you're praying to Allah, Allah in front of Fatima al-Zahra, keep my abru intact. Let me not go and leave this majlis without shedding 2 tears, because I'd feel embarrassed when I get to the door realizing Zahra came. You think about it, you think, On a night like this, they say Zahra comes. But you know how she comes? She has one hand on her back and one hand on her rib. Have you ever seen a mother when she comes to her son have one hand on her back, one hand on her rib? If your mothers are still alive, Allah protect your mothers. May you never see a day when your mother comes to you, her back is bent. This is what tonight symbolizes. This is why Sayyid al-Shuhada, our connection with him is through these tears. Our connection with him is through this movement of tears. Guru Sahib Salawat, please. And one more salawat, please. One more salawat, please. Atil al-Abarah, you've been to Karbala. When you go there, when you walk in, and you move towards the shrine of Sayyid al-Shuhada, when you look up, what do you see? You see a number of titles which are there. One of those titles is this, Qatil al-Abarah. These tears that we shed take you to a maqam of ma'arifah. This is why when we come to a majlis of Sayyid al-Shuhada, why do we switch the light off? The purpose we switch the lights off is so that you're able to focus. Let me give you a tradition. Fourth Imam alayhi salam was sitting there one day. A person comes to the Imam and they say, Mawla, my son is getting married. Is it possible that you can come to the marriage of my son? So at that moment he replies. He says something. He says, look, after Karbala, I don't go to any marriages anymore. I don't go to any marriages anymore. They said, please, we are Shia. If you can come to this marriage, it will really mean a lot to us. Imam says, fine. Ultimately, Imam is kind-hearted, decides to go. He says, but on one condition. The condition is this. If you can recite the Musibah of Ali Akbar. Why? Because my father had a dream that my brother would also get married one day. If you can recite the Musibah of Ali Akbar, I'll come. This is fine. They say when he went, they were all ready there, waiting for the marriage to take place. Imam then gives a hukum. He says, close the lights. He says, why? He says, maybe somebody may get distracted. Somebody may feel embarrassed to cry. Somebody may be looking side to side. Somebody's children may be there. Sometimes you can't cry in front of your children. Dim the lights, close the lights in a way that everyone can cry in such a way that they're not distracted, they don't feel embarrassed. He says, fine. Lights are dimmed. Masa'ib of Ali Akbar is recited. They say the way that they recited it, the entire walls were crying. Shaking, crying. Why? Hussein ibn Ali's son, Ali Akbar. Haqq is that you cry loudly. You know why? Because Imam Hussein cried 4 times loudly, only and only for Ali Akbar. 4 times he cried. We'll look at it in a minute. 4 times he cried. So they say all of them began to cry. All of them began to cry. When the Masa'ib finished, they switched on the lights again, as in they lit the candles again. And they looked up and they saw Zain al-Abidin isn't anywhere. They looked to the right, they looked to the left, they were wondering, where is he gone? Where was he? He was sitting next to the door. When they asked, they said, Mawla, why did you go next to the door for? You know what his reply was? He said, when I came here, I was your guest. Now that you've recited the Masa'ib of Ali Akbar, all of you now are my guests. This is why this is the time of qabuli of dua. Allah bless all of you. For those people who are separated from their children, Allah bring their children back. For those people who are in pain today, in any form of pain, may Allah remove their pain. For those people who are ill and suffering, may Allah remove your suffering. Why? For the sake of Ali Akbar. These are times of dua. No majlises, especially of Ali Akbar. Why? Because Sayyidul Shuhada cannot, when you do one wasta, when you do one, I've seen this myself. If you go today to the shrine of Imam Hussein, next to his feet is Ali Akbar. If you go to Ali Akbar, having exhausted every channel, and you go there and you say, Sayyidul Shuhada, for the sake of this Ali Akbar, before Imam Hussein, Zahra says Ameen. Therefore, the philosophy of tears is this. It takes you from maqam to maqam. It takes you higher and higher. When these tears begin to shed, it takes you from one stage to one stage to one stage. It takes you higher and higher. Why? Because these are the tears of ma'rifah. In the words of Aidulabi, who was a very famous mystic in Tehran, he said, look, for every time you repent, it removes the effect in the hereafter. But what it doesn't remove immediately is the effect in this world. You may feel the effect in this world. For everything that happens, you may feel the effect in this world. But in the hereafter, it will be removed. But he says, if you want to remove the side effects of any deed or sin in this world, cry over Hussein. To give you an example, let's say if one bala is coming, let's say God forbid, let's say you're going to get sick, because this is the time of sickness. You're going to get sick, and you come to the majlis of Imam Hussein, and you're crying there in the majlis of Imam Hussein. It's possible Allah can divert it. Person, for example, is about to go into difficulty, family, or maybe he's stuck in difficulty. You come continuously, because this in itself is a riyadha, is a spiritual exercise. Some amal are done over 10 days. In these 10 days, what you're doing is you're doing dhikr through your tears. You're doing dhikr through salawat. You're doing dhikr through istighfar. You're doing dhikr through unity because you've come together. You're doing dhikr through unity. This is what's important. And so, in this way, remember, pray for one another as well. You know, a hadith says, Imam says, when 40 people get together, 40 people get together, pray for one another. You see, Allah accepts the prayers. For our brothers and sisters who may be sick in our communities, those people who are listening, you 40 people say Ameen. Allah cured them for the sake of Imam Sajjad. For those people who are separated from their children, for whatever reason, Allah, for the sake of Imam Sajjad, you reunite them. For the sake of Ali Akbar, reunite them. For those people, for whatever reason, are broken-hearted and upset, Allah, for the sake of Sayyidah Zainab tonight, may Allah unite their hearts again. You see, this is what we're here for. We're here to do dua for everyone. We're here to remember everyone. You see, this is why they say there's a difference between hal and maqam. At the moment you're developing hal, but you'll see within a second of distraction hal can go. But a maqam is such that the hal remains regardless of any distraction. What we're doing here, therefore, is we're building our state of being in these 10 days so that it comes from hal to a maqam. So wherever you go, you find that you fortified Hussein's ishq in your heart. Even if the world was to shout at you and distract you, you wouldn't be distracted. Look, people like me, I'm naqis, I can be distracted because I'm not on that level yet. But I've seen when people such as Ayatollah Kashmiri or others, Ayatollah Wahid, whoever, Ayatollah Sistani, when they're in this state of being, in this wujud, then even if you're beeping the horn at them, they don't move. Why? Because they've truly understood at least a fraction of what the wilayah of Ali is. Who is that Ali? When he goes into rukuh, you can pull out a spear from his leg. Ali is must in Allah. And so therefore it's time for us to be must in the wilayat of Ali. It's time for us to be intoxicated in that wilayah. Look, remember one thing. In heaven there is a river, and that river comes from the wilayah of Ali Akbar. Now let me put it another way to you. They say that when Khidr meets Musa, or Musa meets Khidr, in Surah Kahf. One of the ta'wil of this is this Maraj al-Bahrain. When the oceans come together, that is from the tajalli of Ali Akbar's wilaya. This is why when a person drank from it, they became Khidr alayhi salam. Why is that? Because in the very same way that Allah is divided, you could say, Allah's not divided, but His names are divided into two. Jalal and the names of Jamal. Right? The Jamali and the Jalali of Allah. In the same way, Sayyid al-Shuhada is divided into two. One part of Sayyid al-Shuhada is the Jamal. Abbas is Ali Akbar. One side is the Jalal, Abbas. When the Imam was asked, who do you love the most? Ali Akbar or Abbas? That question is asked. He replies very beautifully. He says, Abbas is Aziz to me. Right? Because Aziz also has ishq in it, but from the side of Jalaliya. And Ali Akbar, he has hub for Ali Akbar from the side of Jamaliya. You see, both of them are Aziz to Imam Hussein. But the difference is that one for the side of Jalali of Allah, one for the side of Jamali of Allah. When both of these eyes come together of Hussein, it equals one body of Hussein ibn Ali. If only we understood this. This is why sometimes you go to Abbas and you say, Ya kashif al-karbi an wajh al-Hussein. Right, you go sometimes, because you go to Bab Hussein. But the intiha of dua being accepted is when you go to Ali Akbar and you stand in front of him and you call upon him. You call upon that wasila. You see, one is in the outer, the other is in the haram itself, next to the, in the sides of Zari, on the foot of Hussein. Ali Akbar is batin. Abbas is zahir. Abbas is the flag bearer. Ali Akbar is the heart of Hussein. Abbas is Bab al-Hussein. Ali Akbar is Sirr Hussein. Between these two, not only lies Jannah, but within these two should lie your heart. Sometimes you go to Abbas. When you gain the permission from Abbas, you go to Hussein. But when you come to Hussein, what does any father want? A father wants that you go and you give respect to his son. Right? If your son, take it another way. God forbid somebody's child passes away. Allah never show any parents. But let's say something happens to your child. What would you want? People to come and give condolences to you. Maybe somebody to hug you. Somebody to kiss you on the cheeks. Somebody to put their hand over your back. Somebody to console you. By the time Ali Akbar went, that Gharib Hussein, when he was standing there, let me ask you a question. Who was there to console your Gharib Mawla? Ajib, it's heart of Hussein is something, honestly, you can't even understand. Just as a human being, look at what Hussein symbolizes. Heart of Hussein. Ajib, heart of Hussein. That masaib upon masaib is breaking on Sayyid al-Shuhada. Sayyid al-Shuhada submits himself to Allah. Allah has to say, Ya ayyatuha an-nafs al-mutma'inna arji ila rabbiki radiyatan mardiyya. Allah himself has to call Hussein. A maqam comes where Allah himself says, that's enough now, come back to me. Hussein, you've done everything. There's nothing left now, come back to me. This is the maqam of Sayyid al-Shuhada, imagine. Where does our journey begin then? Our journey begins where our journey ends. And that is our tears. People have asked for days, weeks, months, years, why do you emphasize tears for so much? Why? Because it's the most humbling position to be in. When a person cries, it means that they have nothing anymore. They're broken. Does a warrior cry? No. A warrior only cries when he knows that everything is gone. In a battlefield, have you ever seen a warrior cry? They don't cry. When do you cry? When you see dhulm. Amir al-Mu'mineen has never cried. The only time he cried on a battlefield was when he saw the sister of Marhab, for example, looking and walking at the cut body of Marhab. Amir al-Mu'mineen began to cry. Tears came in his eyes. Why? His sister was watching. Ali's ghayra couldn't take it. Ali's ghayur. Ali's ghayur couldn't take it. Qasim, ghayur. Why? Uncle, are they going to come into the tents? He didn't want to say anything. What does Sayyid al-Shuhada say? He says, no, I'm going to take Ali Asghar out. Why ghayur? One of the characteristics of a believer is that they have ghayra. They don't oppress women. They don't oppress women. They don't oppress children. They don't oppress anyone. They defend themselves. They defend themselves, but they don't attack. They're not oppressive, but they're merciful. So in this way, just remember one thing. Tonight, attach on to Ali Akbar like a child would attach on to his mother. Because then you'll see the keys for Hussein open up. In the way that Amir al-Mu'mineen will never turn away Zainab. Thursday when it comes, Thursday is the day of Ashhura. Thursday also, they say Zahra, on every Thursday goes to Karbala. When she goes on that Thursday, it is mamnu from Sayyid al-Shuhada to recite the Masa'ib of Ali Akbar, right? Because Zahra can't take it. Ever think about why she can't take it? Okay, it's her grandson. But you know what Ali Akbar symbolizes for Zahra? For Zahra, it is the son of her heart. And that son that she loves, as you know as a grandparent, when you look at your grandchild, you'll know that there's an attachment there, which is different to your own awlad. In this way, the attachment that Zahra feels to Ali Akbar is something else. Look, let me take it another way. Let me take it another way. How do you undo the blockages? Let's say to this date, say somebody hasn't cried. 9 days have gone by. And I can see, well, the minute I say Ali Akbar, you know why? Because the vast majority of your sahib awlad, you have sons. You know that when your sons get older, your entire reliance, your entire dream is with them. You're willing to give them everything of yours. You're willing to write off your house to them, your car to them, your watch to them, your life, everything. Why? Because the older you get, everything is invested there. Therefore, Allah never give any father or any mother the pain of a young son. Of a young son. I've seen with my own eyes, 16-year-old boy died. 16-year-old boy died. I saw his father physically age in 2 days. 2 days before, 2 days after, when he was lifting the coffin of his son, his face had gone completely, his beard, face, is as if 15 years, 20 years he'd aged. Why? Ask a father why. And for all you youth who are sitting here, respect to your fathers. You don't know what pain they've gone through raising you. If only you knew, you won't understand. You know when you'll understand? When you become a father yourself. As we said a number of days ago, malahim wal fitan. It says that in Akhir Zaman you find that there will be a disownment taking place. Fathers will disown their sons, but in the same way, sons will disown their fathers. Sons, appreciate your fathers, because you don't know how hard they work, how much they invest in you. Your time will come where you'll have children of your own. That's when you'll realize, then it may be too late. So here the tradition does say something. It says one of the biggest barriers, as we've been mentioning, is respect that we have for parents, right? The more respect that you give, this is a qaida kulli for everyone. If you want your life to increase, respect your parents. If you're financially struggling, better than any dhikr is service to your parents, showing love to your parents. Now you can ask the question, and you can say, look, it's too late for me, my parents are not left in this world. Then what do you do? Dulabi once said, he said, I saw a man in front of me who I could see that he was a bazari, and very easily money would come to him. He was loaded. So I asked him, very simple person, I asked him, I said, what do you do? He goes, my father passed away, my mother's alive. Dulabi says, he said that, what do you do with your father? He says, I go to his grave. Whenever I have a problem and I feel that I can't overcome it, I go to his grave. When I go to his grave, I recite a Yasin. The barakat of that, the overflow of that, has meant that I am in the position that I'm in. So just remember this. Just because your parents are not in the world, it doesn't mean they can't disown you from the grave. If you stop visiting them, they can disown you. So what do? Visit them. Okay. As we've said before, let's say for argument's sake, your parents are not here. They're in India, they're in Pakistan, they're in East Africa, right? Maybe they're buried in Europe somewhere, they went for a visit, they went to see their children. Then what do? Then at least you can make a line on the floor, particularly when you're in deep trouble. Try it. Recite Yasin. Carry on this amal and see. Parents' hearts are softened in front of their children. You know what the tradition says? From the grave they lift their hands up, says Allah, maybe my book of amal is closed, but my children are calling me. They're in a lot of pain. Allah, for our sake, as a parent, remove their pain. Right? One thing. How you enact is very vital. And I'm not saying it to you, I'm saying it to myself first and foremost. That we all need to be better sons and daughters. And I say to myself, I need to be much better. I'm not done the haqq, I'm not given the haqq, and I never can give the haqq of my parents. But I can try much harder. We all collectively can do that, because that's what a Shia is. A Shia is always evolving, they're trying hard. Work hard. Do something, especially tonight. In these nights. When you come to the majlis, the best thing you can do? Give something, give some food, give something to the azadar of Hussein. Look, let me give you a story. Allama Dastar-Ghaib Shirazi narrates. Now, Allama Dastar-Ghaib Shirazi was Sayyid Ali Qadi Marhum's student. He says, in Najaf there used to be a man. This man would come. He said, this is pre-Saddam time. He said, I would see this man coming, only for a chai. So listen, man, come on. At least come for the majlis. He used to come for the chai. In essence, we've all done that sometime in our life. When we're younger, I don't know about you, but when I was much younger, I would go for the desi tea. Very small, go in there, didn't understand a word, waiting for the chai to come out, go for the desi tea. They say, Allama Dastar-Ghaib Shirazi looks at this guy, says, look, at least come for the majlis. In those days, they used to go for the tea and the cigarette. Because this is before anyone knew is harmful for your health. By the way, smoking is bad for your health. Don't smoke, is the disclaimer. But in those days, they used to. And they used to give one Rothmans and one tea. And Rothmans that is the, mashallah, the sweetest thing to destroy your lungs very quickly. Right? In those days anyway, I'm not saying now, in case there's a legal issue there. But in those days, smoking kills, by the way. Lung cancer, tongue cancer, every type of cancer, but anyhow. So he says when Saddam came, Saddam kicked them out. So where did they go? Went to Qum. So for those people who've been at Qum, you've got the Haram of Ma'asam at Qum, right? If you look at the front entrance and you cross the road, and then you've got the section where the Arab section is Bazar Kuwaiti, you go into the Iraqi side, Ghuzar Khan, right? You go to the right, you go to Masjid al-Fatimiyya where Ayatollah Bahjat used to lead the prayers. He says that just before you have this, it used to be anyway, Masjid al-Najafiyya, the Najafiyya Masjid. He says though, Ayatollah Dastagir Shirazi says, because I went into the masjid. Majlis happened. Everything finished. What do I see? This guy walks in for the chai. Again, he was there for the cigarette and the tea. So he goes, look, he says, servant of God, at least come for the majlis, man. I'm saying it in my words now. Come for the majlis. Najaf, cigarette tea. Qom, cigarette tea. So the man replied, he said, listen, just leave me alone. I know what I'm doing. So Allah says, when he goes home. Says a couple of days later, when he's passing, he sees that there's pictures, as they do within the East, what they do when somebody dies, they have a picture of them and a black line going through either the left or the right hand side. He's passed away. So he looks up and he goes, Rahmatullah alayh, Khuda rahmatishkune. Was a good guy. At least he came for the chai of Imam Hussein and the cigarette of Imam Hussein. So he passes. Allama Dastagir Shirazi says, he says, that night I saw a dream. He says, in that dream I saw we were in heaven. Big castles and palaces and everything else. I see a huge castle. So I said I went inside it just to check it out. So mashallah, this huge palace, maybe it's Imam Hussein's, maybe it's Abul Fadl Abbas. As he walks in, guess who's standing there? The guy with the tea. He looks up at him, he says, you know, what are you doing here? You here to have tea again? He says, no, you don't get it. This palace is mine. He says, how? He says, I would come with aqidah to drink the chai of Imam Hussein. Because of that aqidah, if anything is mansoob to Hussein, he says, Allah gave me this as jaza for my niyyah that I would come for Hussein. Imagine a person drinking it what his maqam is. Now imagine a person who's serving it what his maqam is, and imagine a person who makes it what their maqam is. Imagine the maqam of that person. You see, we don't get it. We don't get it. There's people raising ishkal, should we do this, should we do that? Brother, even up to the water that's served for the sake of Imam Hussein holds a maqam on the Day of Judgment. It is enough for you on the Day of Judgment that the hadith says Zahra comes like a bird and picks each one, even if you've given a glass of water for the sake of Imam Hussein. That is the maqam. And now imagine if the food is like that, imagine what the khak is like. Ayatollah Abdul Karim Ha'iri, as you know, when a flooding came to Qom and it was about to desecrate everything, what did he do? He goes to they said, oh, you got to do something, right? And Qom in those days wasn't big, it was very small. Everything is going to be destroyed. Ha'iri comes, takes some khak shifa, puts it in the water goes down. Even the water knows Hussein ibn Ali's khak Karbala is so powerful. What Bahjad used to do, she said, look, person's ill, take some of this khak, mix it with water. Now look, there's a tartib. Now people say to me, we tried this, but it wasn't working in the way that you said, right, do this like this, because the tartib is important. Take soil from the grave of Imam Hussein, put it in a jug of water, right, put it in, and remember, don't let it finish. Recite 70 times hamd over it. And then after that, take a spoon. Don't directly drink. Remember, don't directly drink from it. There's a tartib. Take from the spoon in the morning once. If you can recite a hamd 7 times, good. One's enough. If you can't, just Bismillah. Put it in your mouth. One of our teacher's brothers had cancer. He did this, the stool, for 7 days. On the 7th day, the doctor said, your cancer is healing. If one khak can do this, imagine what Hussein ibn Ali himself can do. Look, our time is going. There's a lot I wanted to talk about in these 10 nights. We've not been able to complete it. I wanted to talk about the end stage of Ma'rifah today, which is hikmah, through the lens of Luqman, who Luqman was. I didn't get an opportunity to mention. Perhaps if you allow me maybe 1 or 2 minutes, we'll mention 1 or 2 words about Luqman.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
You know Luqman, right? Let me give you a bit of a background about him, just so that I can go into it. Luqman was an Ethiopian slave in the time of the Israelites. Many people don't know this, right? They say Luqman was an advisor in one tradition to Dawood. But in a time of racism, because remember, there's always been polemic racism up and down the centuries. Even today there's racism in the 21st century. So he says that, look, Dawood the prophet would go to Luqman. One tradition actually says that he was a teacher of Socrates. One tradition says he was, in fact, even before that, the teacher of Pythagoras. Not Socrates, sorry, Pythagoras. This is why Pythagoras learned the ulum al-ghariba as well. He learned some secrets. He wasn't just a mathematician, but he was a person who could make chemia out of anything. Chemia actually is not just turning lead into gold. Chemia is turning the soul into light. Soul into light. This is why fidda is called fidda. This is why when somebody came to her, you found that, see, you have two things, gold and silver. In the Quran, and there's, as you know, more than one word for silver in Arabic. But in the Quran, Allah uses fidda. More than one word for silver. Allah uses fidda. Sometimes I think to myself why that is. Sometimes you come to realize that which is mansoob to Ahlul Bayt becomes enshrined. So anyhow, here's Luqman. Luqman was a Hakim. What is Hakim? Hakim is a wise man. Hikmah is something that even if I was to mention it to a child can understand in its way, and a grown-up can understand in their way. If I was to make it very difficult, I may be, let's say for example, if we start talking about Mullah Sadra's philosophy right now, and I know full well that none of you have studied it, then you may say he's very knowledgeable, but he won't call me wise. If I start speaking in a way which is very difficult in the Queen's English, using an Oxford dictionary in front of me, you may turn around and say, well, you know, mashallah, he's got a lot of knowledge, command of the English language. But for the vast majority of listeners, they would say he's good, but it wouldn't be a wise thing to do. Wisdom is such that even if you speak to a child, that child understands wisdom. And wisdom is such, even if the world's greatest scientist hears it, he understands it. This is why the sayings of Amir al-Mu'mineen, when a person like me reads it, I understand it my way. And when a person like a Marja reads it, they understand it their way. Why is that? Because that's hikmah. You know what Luqman says? Luqman says, Ya Bunayya. Now all of his conversations are with his son. He says, look, if you want to become wise, there are 6 things that you must do. Now look, we don't have time to go into all 6. The one thing I will say to you, so that you can remember this, because it's important, is when Luqman says, he says, son, keep a control on your tongue, as much as you can. By controlling your tongue, what you'll see is that the beginning of hikmah will start coming. I said 1, I'll say 2. The reason being this is also important, because there's many youth here. Luqman says, be careful of the food that you eat. Not only should it be halal, but it also should be pure. This tells us there's a difference between tayyib and tahir. Tayyib and tahir. Just by pumping a chicken up with antibiotics and then cutting it in the halal way, for argument's sake, slaughtering it in a halal way, doesn't necessarily mean it's tayyib. It may mean it's may become tahir, it's not tayyib. So Luqman says, be vigilant about the food that you eat. And as you know today, as we say, you are what you eat. There is a philosophy behind that. But look, nor am I in the hal to go into that. And I don't think you're in the hal tonight to listen either. Thursday night is coming. Ashhura is coming. Many years ago, a caravan from Kashan left from Kashan to go to Karbala. Along the way, they were stranded, water had run out. Feet were blistered, some of them. They say when they came in, it was Thursday night. They walked into the haram and they began to recite the Masa'ib of Ali Akbar. As they were reciting, they were saying, Mawla Hussein, we've come from far away. We're thirsty, we were thirsty along the way, but we came for your sake. Our feet have become blistered, Mawla, but we came walking for your sake. Said, Mawla, now that we've come here, don't send us empty-handed. And they were crying, and the Masa'ib of Ali Akbar was going, and the tradition says that it was as if the walls were shaking. Walls were shaking. Zari, so crying noise was coming from all over. That night they went to sleep. What do they see in their dream? All 40 of them saw that a man comes forward and says, get ready, Mawla Hussein is coming. All of them stand up. After standing up, they say, Mawla, why did you do the zahma to come? We would have come to you. We're the slaves, we would have come to you. You know, Mawla replies, he says, my Zawar knows something. Anybody who comes to me, I come to them. Anyone who comes to me, I come to them. I've come to you. You're a guest for 3 days of Imam Hussein. You know what happens? Abul Fadl Abbas is told, Abbas, my guests are coming. Second thing Imam Hussein says, there's a khadim in Kashan. He straightens the shoes out. He gives the chai out. Cleans your mosque. He says, give him my salam. Why? Because Hussein's salam is on those people who are khuddam. But finally he says something. He says, my Zawar, if ever you come on a Thursday night to Karbala, and if it's my haram, Thursday night, my haram, Thursday night, my haram, don't ever recite the Masa'ib of Ali Akbar. Says, I can take it, but my mother Zahra comes, she can't take it. She says, Hussein, how was it possible that you bore the fact that a lance went into the chest of your son? You know, tonight is very heavy for fathers. Even before I've said it, before the sons, the fathers are crying. Fathers are crying. I'm going to recite slowly. I don't have the energy, I don't have the strength. I've not been feeling well, I don't have the strength. But I know today, there shouldn't be any eye that hasn't got a tear in it. You know why? When you listen to this, you'll know why. They say Sayyidul Shuhada cried in 4 places loudly. Time in the Maqtal when Hussein himself cried. You know when the first time was? First time was when Ali Akbar was riding into the battlefield. Hussein cried loudly. His son was going, old father, right? Look at the description. Army of Yazid say, they say Hussein's beard was white. One hand was on his back was bending. Beard white, hair white, blood all over him, tears in his eyes. My son is going into the battlefield. Second time Hussein cried was when the lance went into the chest of Ali Akbar. Hussein cried. You know when the third time was? When Sayyidul Shuhada was pulling it out of his chest, he cried loudly. You know the final time was when Ali Akbar was on his back and he was crawling back to the tent. May no father ever see this. One is carrying your son, the other is you have no energy left. He had Ali Akbar on his back and he was crawling because his energy wasn't there. But look, you won't be able to take it, believe me when I say it. If I was to recite the whole thing, you wouldn't be able to take it. So I'm just going to recite to you 4 wedahs. Wedahs of Ali Akbar. In and of itself. You know what? When Ali Akbar came to Imam Hussein, He says, Father, I want to go into the battlefield. Father's Imam. He's not going to say no to something which is wajib. He says, Ali Akbar, for me you have permission. But you've got to go and ask 3 people for permission. Who are they, Father? Sayyidah Zainab, your Aunt Zainab, your mother who bore you, and your brother Sajjad. They say the first person he went to was Sayyidah Zainab. He walks inside. Zainab is watching. She says, son, I know what you've come for. She begins to cry. She says, for me it's ijazah. But do ask your mother and see what she says. Second tent he goes into was his mother. Mother was old. Mother was old. You know what? Initially his mother didn't say yes, she didn't say no. You know what she said? She said, Ali Akbar, I don't have anyone in this world. I won't be able to live without you, Ali Akbar. Ali Akbar, all I have is you. What's going to happen to you? You're my son. I have nothing left. One poet writes, he says, at this point, one poet writes, he says, at this point, Layla's heart was breaking. She said, Ali Akbar, stand there for a little while. She goes towards a treasure trove. This is poetry, by the way. She opens it. She pulls out a small cloth. She says, Ali Akbar, when you were 6 months old, you used to wear this. When you were 4 years old, you used to wear this. When you were 11 years old, you used to wear this. When you were 18, you used to wear this. When I was to marry you, I was thinking you were going to wear this. They say Ali Akbar now comes out. Ali Akbar standing there, he says one thing, he says, Mother, if on the day of judgment my grandmother Fatima Zahra says, your son stayed alive but my son died, what are you going to say? She says, Ali Akbar, go. Mother's given ijazah now. Because without ijazah, mother is haram, right? So mother's given ijazah. Now where does he come? He comes to the tent of Sajjad. Starts kissing him on the hands. Starts kissing him on the feet. Starts kissing him on the cheeks. Starts kissing him on the head. Sajjad opens his eyes. He says, brother, what bala has fallen you that you're kissing me like this? Ali Akbar just says one thing. Baqiya abuha ghariban wahidan adshanan madloom. Our gharib father is all alone. Our gharib father is all alone. He's thirsty, has no one to defend. Ali Akbar comes out of the tent. I wish I could recite more. Ali Akbar comes out of the tent. When he comes out, now the old father comes to him. He just says one thing. He says, Ali Akbar, when you were younger, in Banu Hashim, they had a tradition. They would tie an amam on the head of their sons. As soon as they came of age. He said, Ali Akbar, I have a dream in my heart. I've always wanted to tie the amam on your head. When you were small, Sayyidah Zainab would tie it. Then your mother would tie it. I was looking for that day when you'd be married so that I could tie it. That day hasn't come, Ali Akbar. Do you give me the permission today that I can tie the amama on your head? They say Ali Akbar puts his knees to the ground in the way Amir al-Mu'mineen did in the Battle of Badr, in the way Rasulullah was tying the amama around the head of Amir al-Mu'mineen. Every time he would tie it, he would recite Nasru min Allahi wa fathun kareem. He says that when Sayyid al-Shuhada was tying it, he was saying Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi. Amama is tied on his head. Ali Akbar gets onto the horse. Old father just says one thing, says, son, until you don't get into the battlefield, just turn around and keep looking at me. Just keep on turning around and look at me. Fathers, you know what that feels, right? Let it never be that your son comes for the final time. What would you do? Just keep on looking at his face, wouldn't you? This is difficult for Sahib-e-Awlad. They say, one man was writing. He says that I felt so sorry for Hussein on that day. They asked why. He says, as Hussein's horse accelerated, an old father accelerated running. But the father was in grief. He would trip over onto the ground, lift himself up again, run again behind the horse, trip again, run again. Trip again, run again. Ali Akbar attacks. They say, look, I'm going to cut everything. Ali Akbar attacks. One by one, an army of Yazid members coming fighting Ali Akbar. Ali Akbar is killing them. A time comes when Sayyid al-Shuhada sees my Ali Akbar is thirsty. A very big, say, brave fighter comes. When Sayyid al-Shuhada looks towards the tent, he sees the feet of a woman under the tent. He realizes mother is watching. He knows mother is going to take it anymore. He says, he comes back, he says to Layla, Layla, I've heard from my grandfather Rasulullah, when a mother does dua, it becomes mustajab. Go and pray that I see Ali Akbar one more time. Layla comes into the tent, closes the curtain, opens her hair up, raises her hands, says, oh, that person who united Ismail with Hajara, bring Ali Akbar back to Hussein again. The one who united Yusuf with Yaqub. Ya Radda Yusuf ila Yaqub. Ali Akbar comes back. Father, I'm thirsty. Ali Akbar wasn't saying I want water. Ali Akbar was saying, Father, I want Shahada. Why Hussein was watching. Aura 5 said, for as long as the niqab imamat was on, no one could touch him. What was he saying? He was saying, Father, now move your eyes from me so that I can die now. Ali Akbar now goes. Hasin ibn Numair sees his chance. Ali Akbar's back is towards him. He takes a lance. He says, today I'm going to make Hussein cry. He takes a lance, chucks the lance. Lance goes in the air. From the back pierces Ali Akbar's chest. Hasin ibn Numair comes forward, says, maybe the father hasn't seen. Tries to lift up Ali Akbar, lance breaks, Ali Akbar falls. The only person in Karbala not to call Hussein is a son. Why? He knows his father is old, that's why. Accept my final salam. They say Sayyid al-Shuhada collapses on the floor, eyesight goes. One Rawi says, he says, I saw an old man saying, Ya Ali, Ya Ali, Ya Ali. He was crawling on his knees because he couldn't stand up. I don't know if he was calling Ali Akbar or he was calling his father. Comes there, comes to see his son. His son has his hand on his chest. Pain is moving him. They say, you know when you slaughter a sheep, you see the sheep moving. Ali Akbar was moving. Sayyid al-Shuhada says, son, what are you hiding? He says, father, don't look. He says, Ali Akbar, I'm the son of Haydar al-Qarrar, show me what you're hiding. He says, father, a broken spear is in my chest. Hussein's imtihan is here now. Hussein looks at it, says, son, don't worry. Let me help you. Puts one knee on the ground of Karbala, one knee on the chest of Hussein. Ali Akbar grabs the broken part. My heart tells me, looks towards Najaf, says, Ya Ali. Karbala begins to shake. Sajjad opens his eyes. He says, aunt, what's happening here? He says, look yourself and see what happened. Old father, young son on his back. Final thing is this. Mothers, you've heard this, right? Now mothers, this is for you. All of Banu Hashim come to give condolences. Layla isn't there. Sayyid al-Shuhada says, Fidda, can you call Layla for the final time to give farewell to her son? The tradition says that when she went in, she was seeing Layla trying to stand up and she would collapse. Trying to stand up, she would collapse. Fidda says something to Layla, says, why don't you come out and give farewells to your son? You know what the reply comes? Says Fidda, when I heard my son was killed, my eyesight had gone. I was looking for the door, but I couldn't find it.